Meister Kabbanah's 10th, first chapter, 10th halacha. A chatas is usually brought for some sort of shogeg or a suffix, whereas an asham is brought for it's a vadai. It's brought for things that certainly a person did. Usually that's the case. It says that it's attached to it. It says that, for example, there's a nazir who contaminates himself. He should bring his guilt. Literally it means his guilt, but it means a guilt offering. That's not in Vayikra. It just says that a nazir to whom this happened, a kohen who gets contaminated doesn't bring an asham. An asham's prescribed for 6 basic infractions that a person did, and I haven't seen anything that's satisfying. Why these 6 in particular? The Torah says he's guilty, and he has to bring therefore this asham, and why it is that, for example, the tzibur brings all sorts of chataot, which for better or for worse means sin offerings, although sometimes it basically should be translated more properly as a purification offering. A lot of people who have not necessarily sinned bring a purification offering. Okay, and usually it purifies for the contamination that has been affected because of sin, but sometimes just because of contamination stam. I'll give an example: a woman who was given birth, or a woman who had a miscarriage sometime after at least 40 days after conception. So she didn't commit any sin. Not necessarily. It says, yeah, she might have been upset. Her husband said the wrong things, but often it's not the case. So we just assume, why does she bring it? So it's some sort of purification offering. So to the nazir, even though we say al pi musar that the nazir has deprived himself of something, that's a midrashic teaching. The Rama brings that in Hilchot Tshuva and in other places, but then he says, technically speaking, the nazir hasn't done anything wrong. At the end of Hilchot Nazirus, he says that a nazir who does it right has done the right thing and is holy. And only if he had wrong intentions has he sinned. So a nazir, when he completes his nazirus, is not necessarily bringing this chatath because he has sinned. It's only that we assume he did. No, it's a form of purification, or a desanctification in this case. So it says in Yod Hasham Eino ba elam yizifrei kvasim bilvad. See this? And Hasham is only brought from male sheep, not female, and not an aisle. Yesh Asham ba migdole means that could be the big ones. Sorry, it is, that would be an aisle, a ram. V'yesh Asham ba minaktanim, and some come from the small ones. In that case, that's what we said is a keves or a seh. In its first year, it's the keves, right? Keves ben shnato doesn't mean a year old. It means in its first year. That's the most common korban, by the way. The keves, that's in its first year. How many korbanos come that way? That's the tmidim. So there's already 16 of them every week, just for starters, and that's a korban pesach also. Hashlamim ba'im min akvasim min azim min bakar. So it says here the shlamim come from the sheep and the goats, and from the bovine. See, all three behemoths can be brought as a so-called peace offering, and it could be mizacharim umina kevot, from both male and female, minak dolim minak tanim, whether adult or young. And you can't bring an oaf as a shlamim. And if you think about it, what's the whole point of shlamim? You get a little bit is burned on the altar. Some goes to the kohanim, and their meat is eaten by the owners and those they want to share, with whom they want to share it. So really, if you, let's say you give a full-grown pigeon as a shlamim, there's not enough meat to go around, really. Okay. Haktanim. What's the question?
Did you look at the citation I gave for
Shalom? Yeah, okay, yeah. You found it. The one time where it's a thing. And you know what Das Mikra says about that word shalem? So last time I was wondering, shlamim, is it a plural of shalem or shalom? And what does that even mean? And Das Mikra says shalem is it's just a singular form of the word shlamim for poetic purpose. It's singularized.
That's also what Metzudah says.
Yeah. So
does it appear?
It does appear.
Where?
It was, and you sent me the thing. It was Hosea. No.
Amos.
Yeah, Hosea and Amos. I get them confused. A lot of midrashim.
Amos 5:22.
Hosea. There's a line in Chazal that talks about Hosea is dated to Yerovam II. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, normally all those Nevi'im, it tells you what Malchei Yehuda were contemporaneous with them, but Yerovam is always mentioned as the king of Israel at the time. Now the question is, why of all the kings of Israel does Yeravim get this privilege? Mentioned among the Malchei Yehuda, no other Navi does it say about him that he was ministered during this king of the 10 tribes, Malchei Israel. So they say because Yeravim had a special schus when they were trying to snitch on Amos. Amos was basically preaching against Yeravim's regime. It was a bloody regime and all that. It's going to go down. So apparently Yeravim II didn't really accept what they had to say. He said, well, if the Navi in other books, that's why he's dated. So I get the two confused sometimes. Hosea is the beginning. Okay, internet connection unstable. You know what? Can you unplug that USB from the wall? Yeah, this is the white thing, and we'll stick it directly into the computer and make sure that we won't lose anything. It's plugged in properly. We'll stay on. Okay. So yeah, that's where Shelem exists in the singular. And like I said, it doesn't really shed light to what's a Shelem, you know. Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on. Now the computer's recognizing the phone. Wants to upload pictures. Okay. Don't download. Cancel. Oh. Cancel. Wait, okay. Just gonna quit this and we'll get back into the halachas. Okay, next halacha. So it says here, what's the small ones? You have an animal that's just been born. Haktanim heimi ben shmonat yamim ad shanat bima miyom liyom. What's a ktanim? That's from 8 days old. The 8 day including, it doesn't have to be mixas yom kechulo. It means it's you don't have to wait for 8 days, 8 late. 7 times 24 hours from the time of birth. An animal born anytime Monday is ready to be a korban next Monday, just like a bris. We don't actually wait 7 times 24 hours from when the boy is born to circumcise him. A child born at the end of Monday will still be circumcised Monday morning, just like the child born Sunday night. They're almost 24 hours apart in birth, but they will both be circumcised that day. So too with this animal. Okay? But there is more to say about this. For this particular din, the 8 days and 30 days, we say mixus and kulo, we don't exactly count the hours. Now, that's a sugi we saw before. The me'ez le'ez. What is me'ez le'ez? Sometimes it means, when you're talking about from day to day, it means actually from 24 hours. Sometimes that means. So the Gemara and Nida actually points out that there's a few dinim that we have that basically we count the exact calendar day in terms of years using the Hebrew calendar. So let's see the next two halachas which actually bring out this point. It says that there's this halacha. Afal pi shekol HaKorbonot ksherim b'yom hashmini v'hala. Ein makrivin lechavchila el miyom shloshim v'hala. Chutz min habachor maaser. Chutz min habachor min hapesach maaser. Shim ritzalek rivam b'shmini lechavchila makriv. This one basically says that there's a distinction here. The pasuk says u'bayom hashmin v'hala yeretzel lekorbani shel Hashem, but it says also yom hashmini titanoli. That's talking about the Bechor. Actually says, give it to me on the 8th day, as opposed to all the other korbanot, which says from the 8th day on. So these three are connected, and these three have a special standard that l'chadchila they can be brought on the 8th day. And there are those who challenge the Rambam, because the source Mishneh, I think it's in Torah, might be in the first parak. You guys would check that for me. In the source material, it seems that it also includes other korbanos, Garmin and Davos and other such. So you could go check that. It's a question. And this also, like we said, is of the standard that it's just the counting days. Now, there's other halachas that apply to this also. Let's see. What other halachas have this? There's things about counting the years from bar mitzvah and arachim, how old someone is, bateri choma. All of those years are counted me'eth le'eth, because I'll say that they're counted basically date. Lafuke what? For example, Rabbi in one of these sugyas said it's an exact solar year, 365 days, and that's a good havamina. We pointed out that there's a discrepancy in the leap years. What can happen? Often, because one year has two others, and then the next year invariably has just one other, you're going to have that the anniversary of events later that were in the second Adar, but in the first half of the second Adar, they have their anniversary before events from that were in the latter half of the second Adar. The example is the yurtzites of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who passed away in Tashmu, 86. So what happened in 86? Rav Kamenetsky passed away at the end of Adar Rishon, early in March. And then just about 2 weeks later, on Tanis Esther, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein passed away, which Tanis Esther is usually, we observe it in Adar Sheni. So in years that are leap years, we celebrate the yurtzites, or we observe. But most years, Rav Moshe's yurtzeit comes before that of Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, passed away before him. So there you have that. That's what they're trying to say here when it says the year was this Abrelo. We're going to see that in a second. This Abrelo, so it counts the leap year, the leap month. We say even though this animal, I guess, is 13 months old, once its leap month comes around, it was born in Nisan, and then from Nisan the next Nisan, there's 13 months. So yes, this animal is 13 months old, but that's not what's the halachic standard. That's what we saw over here. Halacha. She'ot monim l'kodashim. For this one halacha, which is a few places in Shas, they say that there's a case where the animal was slaughtered, and when it was at the proper age, but by the time they got around to throwing the blood, it was already an hour too old. So in this case, they actually count the very hour. So you have to, whereas we said with regards to the animals being a month old or 8 days old, or any other halachic standard, we don't count the exact hour of the day. In this case, we do. You have to mark when each animal was born, because it could have gotten more than a year old. It's now a year and an hour older. So that's possible. It says here, Shot Monim LaKodashim. We count the hours for these Kodashim. If it's just an hour too early, an hour too late, then it's pasul. That's regards to its years. And here's the examples. Korban shemitzvato liot ben shana, imosif al shana sha'achat nifsal. If it's a korban, it has to be within its first year. If it's an hour past its first year, it's pasul already. Even if it was within its first year at the time it was slaughtered. And now it's past that time. It's just a little bit more than exactly a year old. At the time they got around to throwing the blood, which, by the way, there's not a lot of time to throw the blood. Why not? Why is there not a lot of time to throw the blood? They catch the blood in something called the mizrak, from the word srika. It means they can't put the cup down. It didn't have a flat base like our cups. It was basically like a cone, or a rounded bottom, so that it couldn't be. Someone couldn't put it down. The Kohen wouldn't put it down on, let's say, one of the tables that were there, and allow it to just clot. It would spill if you do such a thing. So that's also a disqualification. That applies to all the korbanot, and this is a unique halacha in Shas. We haven't seen this anywhere else. We discussed before how this exactly to the hour standard was taken up by the Pri Megadim in a few halachas, which other achronim taken to task for that. We also saw that this was something he applied this Kiddush Levana, and you can go back to earlier Shurim, see about that. So now let's close Rosh Hashanah. Hold on a second, the connection was destabilized. Rabbi Siskind pointed out something I really enjoyed. That is the language that we use when we describe the Jewish calendar. It's full of references to pregnancy and birth. So the moon is Molad and Nolad. There's a Molad of moon, and the moon is Nolad. And a leap year is a Shana Mubareth, a pregnant year. And there's Leil Ibur is the extra day that they add to the month when you have a month that's full. So that's a Leil Ibur, a pregnant month. So pregnancy and birth figure very prominently in the principles of our calendar. Another thing is that you could have different lengths of years. Aside from the fact that some years are leap years and have extra months, some don't. Really, there's six different lengths for a Jewish year. So you have the leap month, which is always 30 days added, but then you could subtract the day from Kislev, or you can add a day from Teshuvah. the standard Kisidra is the deficient, and then Kislev is full, Teves is deficient. Full, deficient, full, deficient. That's how it should go. And in order to add a date to the year, we add a date to Cheshvan. So then you have Tishrei, Mar Cheshvan, and Kislev consecutively are full. Or you could subtract the day from Kislev. So you'd have Tishrei full, but then Mar Cheshvan, and then Kislev, and then Teves are all deficient. You never have it that Mar Cheshvan is full and Kislev deficient. It's Minastam. The default is Mar Cheshvan is deficient, Kislev is full. Now you could make Mar Cheshvan also full, or you can make Kislev deficient. It's never the reverse. So this ends up with the permutations. What do we have? We have a year can be 353 days long, 354 days long, or 355 days long. Those are standard years. And if it's leap year, it's those plus 30. So 383, 384, 385. And Dr. Landau has this idea. You could wish a person, Admev Esrim. What's the longest a person could live in 120 years? You hope that you could stick in as many leap years within that 120 years. Not every 120 years has the same amount of leap years. Leap years are 7 out of every 19, and according to our calendar, at least with the regular cycle, and then 19 doesn't go exactly into 120. It's a 6 and a remainder there. So your days than another person is the same age. All bar mitzvahs are 13 years old, but some bar mitzvah boys passed many more days to get to that point. So the leap years in there, and also among those leap years, and just among regular years, you want more full years than you want deficient years. Imagine if a person had the maximum number of possible, he's experienced non-leap years that are 353 days long, and this other fellow has experienced, so he's gained a few days along there. So the result in this discrepancy. But the point is that for this one halacha, we have it that we actually look at the very hour of the day, and this is unique in Shas basically. There's a Gemara in there. Nita, maybe we'll look at it next time. Kol makom shne'emar b'Torah keves o kisba o kvasim harei elu b'nei shana. Whenever it says in the Torah that's a keves or kivsa or kvasim, that's b'nei shana. Like I said, not a year old like we say in modern Hebrew or English. It means within the first year. The chol makom shne'emar ayil oleilim hareim zecharim b'nei shnatayim. This is the animal when it's in its second year, 2 years old, so to speak, but means in its second year. Okay. Umiatayi karei ayil. So when does it have an ayil? When's it called that? Mishi kanes bashnashniya echad u'shloshim yom. It has to be at least 1 year plus 31 days. 31 days into its second year. On the day before that, he's not technically a kevis anymore. He's not young. He passed his first year, but he's not an ayil yet. Instead, he's called a palgas. Palgas is apparently from Greek. Okay, right? That it doesn't look modern. It's certainly not a Torah word. So this palgas is halfway there. So, and people say like they darshan it like peleg, and plag, like halfway there. But apparently it's Greek.
Actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Considering the ending would be like os.
Yeah.
It isn't really part of the word, it's just an ending.
Yeah. They added to that, and also names. That's in Latin, right? Everything ends in us. It becomes a noun suddenly. Okay.
No, it's that's just how nouns are.
Yeah. The chol makom shne'emar bo egel. What's an egel? Egel is technically a calf, right? Harei zeh ben shana means it's in its first year. Par ben shnatayim, and it's a bull in its second year. Se'iri zim ben shtayim. So if it's a se'iri zim, that's a full-grown goat, so it's in the second year. Kol shana shniya hu nikra sa'ir. And the entire second year, he's called a sa'ir. Why? Because we saw earlier that a young goat is sometimes used the same word as a young sheep. Okay, that's why you could use them. There's certain korbanos, like the Korban Pesach. Once again, you have to bring a kid goat or just a lamb. Okay, so yeah, this the Korban Pesach doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a lamb. Okay, so we saw these halachos here. Kol korbanot tzibur zecharim. I want to check something. let's make a note of this. I want to correct myself. So just also, people like finding mistakes in YouTube videos. I have to check something, so I'll do that next week, and we'll confirm that this is correct. Okay. Let's see. All Korbanot Tzibur is a charim. All Korbanot of the Tzibur are male. V'chol chataot shel Tzibur min ha'ez o min ha'bakar ve'ein bahem min ha'kvasim. What are chataot of Tzibur? Okay, they come from the Ezer or the Bakar, and it doesn't come from Kvasim. Give me chatas of Tzibur. The most common chatas of the Tzibur is on Rosh Chodesh. But then again, it's the same series on every one of the Moadim mentioned in Pinchas. And then there's a chatas of the Tzibur for special occasions, and on sometimes I think it's not on Yom Kippur necessarily, but it's never brought from a lamb. It's always a goat or a bull. Okay, rings could be female, but a chatas of the tzibur has to be male. The whole ola tzibur min ha'kvasim min ha'bakar ve'ein lahem ola min ha'ez. Further, any burnt offering from the tzibur, unlike that of a yachid, and from sheep, but it's never a goat. There's never a goat burnt offering offered on behalf of the tzibur. If it's a goat, it's always a chatas, and if it's a lamb, it's always an ola. And if it's a bull, it could be a chatas or an ola. So these are the two word things. Kol chatas yachid nekeva. Any chatas brought by an individual is female. And it should be eaten by who? The kohanim. And also, it should not come from bovine. Right? That's a chatas of yachid. Chutz mishlosh chatot. There's 3 exceptions, not regular people. It's the one of the nasi, chatata nasi, asher nasi yechata. Who's a nasi? The Rashi says there simply it's the king, but it's lav dafka. It's been pointed out some people had the title of nasi even though they weren't king. The way the Rashi and others understand it is the nasi means someone who has no one ranking higher than him. So Melech is an example of a nasi. Okay, shehi eiz v'nechelet. The chatas of a nasi is an A's that's female, and it's eaten. Okay. It's an A's. It's a he goat. Sorry, I got tricked by the ne'achelet. The ne'achelet in this case means that what? It's the chatas, because chatas is a feminine noun, so it says ne'achelet, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on a second. Yeah, it should be the chatat. So A's, it means that the nasi brings a he goat as a sin offering, and it says when the Rambam says ne'achelet, he means as a chatas. Okay, is it Sefer HaTorah Hazeh, because it's Sefer Torah, or Sefer HaTorah Zoth? Where do you put the psik? Okay, so it's Torah Zoth. It's the book of this Torah, or Sefer HaTorah Hazeh means this Torah scroll. Okay, the Chatat Kohen Mashiach, the Chatas of the anointed Kohen means a Kohen Gadol, but this is the one exception. It says there's a Kohen Gadol who sometimes is anointed, first temple type. And then there's Kohen Gadol who didn't have the anointing oil, and he was just initiated into the service by putting on the garments. So this, it says specifically that the Kohen who makes this mistake and has to bring this chatas is the Kohen Mashiach. So it says, maybe it means to exclude a Kohen who only became Kohen Gadol through wearing the clothes. She parv in nisrefet. It's a par, and it is burnt. Okay, nisrefet, once again, as an offering. Nisrefet is feminine. Okay. And par is masculine. It means he brings a male bull. Okay, and then as an offering, it's burnt. The hua nikra par ba al kol mitzvot. That's a par brought for all the averos that a Kohen Gadol could do. It means just not a avodah zarah. Okay, sorry, no, that's that's not what it means. It means that's just par kol mitzvot, because a Kohen Gadol can bring that when he makes a mistake. That's what I was thinking about. The Kohen Gadol brings a bull as a sin offering also, and burnt, and it's masculine. So these are the 3 individuals. Why did he say Parsh, maybe Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim is Israel? It's not a Korban Tzibur, right? Where do we see this? The Rambam says this. He mentions this at the beginning of Hilchos Avodas Yom Kippurim. What does it say here? says Biyom Datzom Makrim Tamid B'Shachar Tamid Ben Arbaim Keseder Kol Yom Umakrim Musaf Hayom Par Va'ayel V'Shivak Vasim V'Chuban Olot Usir Chatat Nase B'Chutz V'Hu Nechal La'Erev. There's a Sir Chatas. Adap Bnei Yisrael Yikach Shnei Sirim. Says he takes 2 Sirim from Bnei Yisrael, means it's Korban Tzibur. One is going to be a Chatas, and the other one's going to be the scapegoat, going to be thrown off the cliff. V'od makrim material musaf zeh par ben bakar lechatat v'hu nisraf. That bull brought as a sin offering, it'll be burnt and not eaten. The ayalola, another ram as a burnt offering. Ushnehem mishel kohen gadol. So even though these are prescribed, they're requirements on Yom Kippur, this bull and this goat, this doing on them. They're pointing out here, starting Yom Kippur, it seems to be, almost for everybody. It's not a big heaven of everybody. It's different animals, these different prescriptions. There's some ideas behind them. The Rambam says, though, no, there just has to be rules. Rules, and God wants rules. But really, why 7, right? Why a lamb and not why does that have to be male and not female? I don't know the answers, and I don't think there's there are those who have attempted to give answers. All didn't have exactly each time why it is. For example, the Chatas. Chatas is a female, but then you can hide the fact that it's female. So why do it have to be female to begin with? Lower Shlamim, and he has committed a sin. So don't let people see that this is a female. So why did the Torah even tell him he has to bring a female? Why just let him hide the fact by giving him the choice of bringing male or female? So I don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. And I like the Rambam says, you could read it. Sometimes it just has to be that way. Like who? With second, I think there's a difference. Well, I have here in Korean Kol Chatat. Yeah, so there you go. The Rambam writes this in plural or in singular? Okay. Okay. But either way, there's 2 ego. It's that one is not necessarily the pain Sirei Avodah Zarah, Ufar Hell Oh, okay, I'm back. Let's go back to the halachas of Yom Kippur. What does it say? The musaf is sir chatas nase b'chutz v'hu nechol ha'erev. Lambs, right? So he says par va'al v'shivach vasim kulan olot. One bull, one ram, 7 lambs. That's a regular holiday musaf. And the sir chatas. And then you also bring par ben chatat. Nisraf, va'al lo shnei mishal k'magdol, va'al ba mishal tzibur hamur v'farashat acharot, hu ha'ayil hamur b'chumash b'pnim b'chlal musaf, hu nikra el ha'am. V'od mivim mishal tzibur shnei sirei zim, echad korev chatat, v'hu nisraf, v'asheni surim ha'mishtaleach. So Rama points out there 2 rams are mentioned. Really, they're one and the same ram. Yeah, you heard that? That's the thing that they teach you when you learn Mishnayos. The ram of the Musaf is the same ram mentioned in the special offering that they bring on, that's mentioned in Achrimos, this week's Parsha, according to the 1-year cycle. But that he goat as a sin offering, which is brought just like on the other holidays, that one will be eaten, except not on Yom Kippur, because the quantum can't eat on Yom Kippur. It's forbidden. So that's eaten la'erev. May erev ad erev tishbetu Shabbat lechem. Even time, that's when they can start eating again, right? But the seir chatas, that's brought along with its matching scapegoat, the one that's thrown off the cliff, that one is not eaten. So there are 2 goats as a chatas offered in Yom Kippur, one of which will be eaten eventually, and one of which not. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, we should discuss this. I don't know. Don't they have a? That's something I never understood quite too well. What do they do when Yom Kippur Avodah time in where you've davened in the past? It's a really long period, and have to bow down at certain points. Has anybody ever taken time to really think about what is being said as it's being said? No, I don't think anybody has. I've never been there. You know how Rabbi Soloveitchik started this practice? I think this practice should go the way of the dodo because I think Tisha B'Av should go the way of the dodo. This year, God willing, no more kinnis. But in years past, when they had kinnis, what did Rabbi Soloveitchik tell people to do? Or what did he himself do? So what I grew up is, what do you do? Yeah, study them. You sit with the kinnis. You have a book. No one knows. It's a complex poetry. It's a Tuesday or Thursday or Sunday in New York, wherever you are. So you go to your Tisha B'Av and you sit on the floor and you read the kinnis. Because some people got to work. I remember I had to go to school. Balabatim don't get through it. So Rabbi Soloveitchik would sit down and actually discuss it with everybody. You have nothing else to do. Sit on the floor and actually discuss the kinnis. And now every rabbi worth his salt does this nowadays. It's a whole morning, right? Tisha B'Av. And maybe you've done that many times. You still haven't? What do they do in yeshiva? Okay.
I don't remember. They do like the set of shearing.
Okay, so they you're familiar with this. They discuss it, and then they start doing this also with what else do they do this with? They should do this with slichas, by the way. Slichas is the other thing.
I think that we actually did.
Yeah, Ashkenazic slichas is it's a different piyutim every single day, and you have your slichas book. How you say it once a year? There's certain piyutim. When Rosh Hashanah is on a Tuesday, then you have the full slew of all the slichas. You get to the ones that you say that Sunday before Rosh Hashanah on the Monday, right? That last Sunday, the extra Sunday, that's only said once, on average, once out of every 7 years. People don't know that. So really should go through this. Also Yom Kippur Avodah. It's basically run through. So maybe there'll be a shiur if the davening has enough time and there people would looking through this. So this is what I start doing. Less of the piyut during Shemona Esrei because just distracting. And more like after Musaf, sit down and then go through it and actually learn these halachas. The Rambam, like I said, I like it. There's a Seder Avoda. There's a few different piyutim. There's Amitz Koach and what's the other one? Ata Konanta. Those are the 2 major ones in the Machzorim, right? One's basically associated with Nusach Ashkenaz, one with Nusach Sfard. Although a lot of places here in Israel, they just use the Nusach Sfard one because it's supposed to be a simpler language. There's another classic Avoda piyut. They're very similar. You all have the Kohanim Va'am. And the Rambam himself puts it all together in one parak over here. He says, here's the exact order you do it in. Seder Kol Ma'asim Sheb Yom Zeh. It's in the 4th parak of the Avodas Yom Kippurim. I like that one better. You know why? Because not a piyut. Okay? It's actually just written out in, like Rambam says, the Lashon HaMishnah. So I use that one. Why? Because you can actually understand it. No, there's no piyut. And anybody who knows just little these halachas can follow along with them. It says Achar kach nichnas leichal maktir ketoret shel shachar. Then he goes into the sanctuary and he burns the ketoris of the morning. Umetivithani roth means he sets up the menorah. Umaktir evrei tamid v'chavitin v'anasachim kechol seder tamid shel kol yom sheb'yarna. Then he burns the chavitin and the limbs of the offering. And then it says he puts on his big day zahav. Right? He takes them off. He goes to the mikvah. Right? It's all written very easily. So I'm surprised people don't use the Rambam's version of this as the one as the Seder Avoda. It'd be much easier. People would be able to follow along and they'd understand it. Okay, whatever. So what are you going to do? I'm not in charge, so I don't make the rules. Let's see here. Here it goes. Ufara ba'al kol mitzvot paral davar. We read this. Halamata shechamesh chatot heiman nisrafot. So you see here that 5 chataot are the ones that are burned. Shtaim liyachid v'shalosh latzibur. 2 offerings of an individual are burned, and 3 of the tzibur. Okay, they're not eaten. Okay. Yeah, that's the next thing. Next halacha. I'm just going to make sure we have we're on the same page here. Kol korbonot ha'elu nikraim zvachim. All these korbans that we described are called zvachim. What does that mean, zvachim? Like Hati points out, what slaughtered. So it's butchered. Or butchered. It's a synonym with nishchatim. Well, so why not nishchatim? Because zevach means slaughtered. Not even normally shchita is ritual purposes, but zevach means more of a ceremonial, celebratory purpose. It says even Balak made vayizbach zvachim. Okay, Balak, when he was greeting he had his plot going, and he brought on his mercenary, his secret weapon Bilam, says that he also vayizbach. Right. Next. But then again, a lot of korbanos it says vayishchat. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he slaughtered the other offering, it was vayishchat, not vayizbach. Okay. Often a zevach sometimes means specifically one that's meant to be eaten. So in the Torah, usually zevach has more to do with eating. In the Mishneh, the tractate, zevachim means those korbanos that are dafka slaughtered, as opposed to, let's say, menachos. A mincha is not slaughtered, right? And not only that, the Rambam hasn't discussed here many bird sacrifices so much. He's mentioned them, but do bird sacrifices fall into this category of zvachim? Technically not. How do you prepare a bird sacrifice? Malika. No, it's totally different. Now, normally you have to shech the bird if you want to eat it, but in the Beis Hamikdash they didn't do that. And it's the other side, and they do the whole thing with thumb. How do you translate malika? Popping? Beats me. Okay. All the burnt offerings, all the sin offerings, all the guilt offerings, and the 2 lambs brought as a shlamim on Atzeret, that Shavuos, Nikraim Kodshei Kodashim. These are most holy, or holier than the other ones. Aval shlamim shel yachid v'abachor v'maaser b'pesach Nikrim Kodshim Kalim. You have peace offering brought by an individual, and the Bechor, the Meiser, and the Pesach, those are called Kodshim Kalim. And there's nafkaninas, the place where these animals have to be slaughtered, and where the blood is received, and ultimately where they're eaten. Okay, Kodshim are eaten in the Azar also. And I found today just a hint in Yechezkel to this question. Wait a minute, where did the Kohanim exactly eat the Kodshim? They have to eat them in the Azara, right? Did they sit? Because they can't sit in the Azara. So the Navi describes a special room where the Kohanim would eat their Kodshim. Says in the future temple there'll be this room where they take their the korbanos to eat them. Okay, so maybe this is technically because the room is sanctified, yet it doesn't count as a zara. We saw that there's a thing if the way the room opens up into the kodesh makes it kodesh also. So maybe those places are sanctified to the azara to the extent that even though it's a room, so it counts as a zara, so they could eat there, but it's not a zara like big open actual courtyard where it's forbidden for people to sit. Okay, so the kohanim could sit there and eat. Okay, Tzarchim. Next, Hevarim shesarfim otan al gabe hamizbeach mina chataot hanechalot mina shamot mina shlamim. The piece of the korban that they burn on the altar from the sin offerings, and from the guilt offerings and from the peace offerings, Heim Anikrim Emurim. Those are called Emurim. Is that what it's called in the Torah, Emurim? Obviously not. Why not? How do I know that's not a Torah term? Moses didn't, in his Torah, call it that. How do I know that? Because it ends with a nun. Okay. Next, Hamuramehem. Okay. Hamuramehem. Emurim is it's not from the word laharim, like truma. Why? Because the mem and resh are switch places, right? Mm-hmm. So emurim, what's the shoresh of it? Okay, what's the shoresh there? I've seen that perhaps the aleph isn't part of the shoresh, and sometimes it says hamuramehem, the muram, right? Mm-hmm. Hamuramihem, is it that hey is not part of the shoresh either? Mm-hmm. So this aleph is like that hey, it's not part of the shoresh.
It's like Maran.
What?
Is it Maran?
I don't know. I don't know how to break apart this word grammatically speaking, but either way, it's the part that goes on the mizbeach. Chazal, I think maybe it's an Aramaic term. Okay, comes to the Aramaic, those are the parts they put on the mizbeach. In Sefer Vayikra, for example, it just describes these parts specifically. Okay, it's something that says nitacheha, just like the piece of it get put on the mizbeach. Or when it says the shlamim, it says hayoteret al kaved. Those pieces, the actual ones that they describe, so it's a little bit tricky. If you have a shore, that's a bull, or an aze, that's a goat. So what parts of it? Just right, right? That's the way the Torah describes it. Torah doesn't say the emurim; it just says this thing, the big piece of forbidden fat that's on the diaphragm. And that includes also this big piece of forbidden fat that's on the kiva, that's one of its stomachs. Have you guys seen the pictures of these things? You look in the back, they have pictures from Rabbi Lach. Rabbi Lach in New York put out a sefer which has all the pictures. He put this out like 20 years ago, and it's been used. So you have it, yeah, right there. So they have the pictures were eventually used by Art Scroll. Slifkin used them, and I think even some are put in the Makbili. Maybe the Korean uses them. Everybody uses his illustrations and his photographs. They're quite good. And he put out a second sefer. I got the sefer one was new. I got the blue version, but apparently he put out an even better one just shortly thereafter. Okay, so you look at the pictures. Chaim David Lach, if I'm not mistaken, Chaim Dov starts with a Chaim, so you can see the pictures there. It's quite good. Or you could just learn Shita. Why? Why is this necessary to know when you're a shochet? Because the same chalev that's offered on the mizbeach from Kachim is forbidden to be eaten when it's chulin. Chulin means, once again, it's also not a just like emurin and is not a let's say a Tanakh term. Chulin also isn't. Chulin with a dot malamid means halal, means it's a profane meat, not sacrificial meat. So you have to take out the forbidden fat. If you're dealing with an animal that's a behemoth, not a chayil. You slaughter let's say a wild animal, a giraffe, a deer, a gazelle. There's no chalev. There's no din of chalev. There is a din of covering up the blood, but there's no din of chalev. Chalev only applies to these domesticated animals that could be a korban. So too, there's no chalev of birds. So the chicken doesn't have a din of, let's say, gid hanasha. Even though a chicken has technically a gid hanasha, it has a sciatica nerve, but it doesn't apply to a chicken. Only animals with a certain hip bone. So too, forbidden fat only applies to these types of domesticated animals. Wild animals, they also have this big chunk of fat on the diaphragm, but it doesn't count as forbidden fat because it can't be a korban. And conversely, you slaughter a bird and a wild animal, you have to cover the blood. But you slaughter a domesticated animal like a sheep or a goat or a cow, you don't have to cover the blood. Guys, have you ever done covering the blood? No. Okay. So that's the one mitzvah you could do, have kaparas. So don't do kaparas, but if you see people are doing kaparas, so you could chop around and do a mitzvah, pick up some straw or something or some dirt from the ground and cover the blood. So that's a mitzvah. There's a bracha on that also. Okay. Ushtei klayot b'chelev shalihem, and the two kidneys. So there's the diaphragmic fat, and then there's the one also that big piece you see in the pictures. I'll show you where it is, and the two kidneys along with their fat. Ima chelev asher al ksalim, along with the the fat that's on top of the salim. I think that's an extra part of the kidney. That's this thing that's hanging on there. You can see in the picture. They show it to you. Well, in my picture, I see that they should point out where the salim are. Okay, so you can see in the picture. I'll just have a picture of the kidney. Where is it? Okay, yeah. So Yoterat Kaved, and this is the also that thing on the sorry, the al karev. Chel vasher al karev is referring to, I think, the uh shir al karev. The kaved is the liver. That's the liver, and the karev is the innards here, and the yoterat kaved is referring to this thing over the liver. Okay, so this is on the diaphragm. Okay, and yoterat kaved is not the diaphragm. I was thinking kaved, that's the diaphragm. No, kaved is not the diaphragm. Kaved is the liver. So this is the extra stuff on top of the liver. The liver, when you have, let's say, a cow, you have to take off that big piece of forbidden material that's on the liver, but you can eat cow liver. And that's they even, I think they sometimes sell those. But when they make roasted livers here or chopped liver, what are they using? It's chicken liver. Okay, it's not cow. No, tell me not kaved me'at im hayoteret. You have to take a little bit of the kaved along with the thing that's on top of it because you cut it off. You can't do a clean cut. So some of the liver goes with the korban, but the rest of the liver is not considered sacrificial. Okay, so you can see the pictures. They point out to you where it is. These are called the chelef. That's the choicest fat or the forbidden fat. So that goes on the mizbeach. And when you're eating chulin, that's the part that's forbidden. So what do you do with it? Just they throw it away. Okay. So if you have, this is an important thing to understand about kachim. If you have kachim, zvachim, so the blood is the important part. The blood is what's put on the mizbeach. And the forbidden fat, that's also burned on the mizbeach. Conversely, in chulin, the blood's the most forbidden thing. What are you supposed to do with the blood of chulin? It's spilled out like blood, like water. You have to, and then not only that, whatever spills out, you have to wash away. You then have to go and make sure that however you're going to be eating this meat, unless you're eating it straight up raw, which is a little bit uncouth, you have to either roast it or salt it in order to get out the rest of the blood. You guys know you could eat meat tartare if you don't grind it up. If you have a clean cut piece of meat that's washed off of the outer blood, you technically don't have to remove its blood to eat it because only dam shapirish, dam that left its place, is forbidden. So if you're going to boil the meat or cook it in a stew, the blood will come out and then ruin everything. That's treif. By treif, I mean not a treif. I mean it's non-kosher. A Yiddish word for non-kosher. So what you got to do is salt that meat well and remove all the blood beforehand, or you roast the meat. But technically speaking, you eat the meat straight up without, just by washing it well. Okay, you could season it for taste, but don't remove the blood. If you salt your meat to remove the blood, what's going to happen? Where's the blood going to be? Yeah, on the surface. So you have to wash it afterwards. Also, have you guys ever done malicha?
Yeah, I might have done a little.
Okay, so it's an interesting process. The Rambam talks about also scalding the meat, like throwing it into vinegar or hot water or something to seal the blood in there. Okay, they don't do that. No, they don't do like the Rambam says. Okay, let's see here. Korban mimin kvasim. If the animals from the kvasim, so you also have to take out the imurim, the forbidden fat. However, kvasim said was sheep. Mosif alelu ha'alyat mima. We add to these the complete tail, the fat tail. The alyat mima of a keves is actually huge. It's let's say for a cow, the tail isn't so significant, right? In goats and in cows, the tail is just a little thing, it's not significant. But in a proper sheep, the tail weighs a few kilos. It's this big thing, and it's very fatty. Yeah, surprised? So you're wondering, this is like, so how come we don't eat that? Because of forbidden fat. Okay? And you cut it off with a few vertebrae that's actually in the actual animal. It's not just visibly the tail. At least this one shows a picture over here. You have to give the vertebrae that reaches up to the kidney. So you make the incision there, and this whole fat tail with the few vertebrae, that's what's offered on Mizbeach. Shnemar, lumat ha'atzeh yisirena. Opposite the atzeh, that's like its back loin over here, that's where you have to cut off the fat tail. And all these emurim, these parts for the Mizbeach are burned on the outer altar, the altar of, it's called the Mizbach HaOlah, the main altar in the temple. Let's say the animal is pregnant. Okay, he didn't realize it before he slaughtered her. Some people know animals; they know they're sacrificing a pregnant animal. Even though it was ready to give birth. So if the young would come out, the young would be not a preemie. It'd be ready to, fully grown and all that. Oh, I forgot to put this on screen. So even though it's completely ready, even if let's say they slaughtered this animal and they find, there's a living fetus in here ready to be born. So you don't take the chelev out of this calf, let's say, and burn it with the forbidden fat of the mother. That's a korban. Ela chelev imo bilvad. Only the chelev, the actual animal. The ubar can't say, well, okay, we'll just use it for the next korban. No, it is like one of the pieces of this animal. Eventually, it has to be what? It has to be burned, right? Or it has to be consumed, whatever the rest of the way of the sacrifice. If it's a shlamim, so it's a shlamim, it has to be eaten like shlamim. And if it's a chatas, it has to be eaten by the kohanim, right? Yeah, that's usually the case. Okay, so let's see the second parak. This is wild things. Said we have very little experience with this. I wonder how often the Jewish slaughterhouses they actually have this. The normal case is if in a slaughterhouse, for example, they slaughter, let's say, a cow, and there's a ubar there that's able to walk, a calf. So that calf, they could leave it alive, and it doesn't require shechita, technically speaking, right? Ben Pakua, remember? So, and then there was a guy who was trying to raise a whole flock of these animals that they wouldn't require shechita. But the animal's born. Its mother was a bas Pakua, and its father was a ben Pakua. So the offspring is still, even though it was taken to term, it was born like a normal animal. It still doesn't require any shechita. It still is for blood and all that you can't eat, forbidden fat, but it's around this technical thing. But you can't do it. I don't know how that came along. I know it was a few years ago. He was trying to just a guy in New Zealand, I think. Remember we saw this definition. Why is this important? The Rambam says this. The wine and the flour that they bring with the korban are called nisachim. Why is that so important?
You don't really.
What?
You don't really pour solas. You wouldn't know.
Nisachim is usually wine. What he's telling you is that sometimes, halachically speaking, the flour that comes with the wine, even though it's going to be made into its own offering, you don't mix the flour with the wine at all. It's still called nisachim. When you have just the flour or the fine flour, it's basically farina. So that's called minchat nisachim, the mincha of the nisachim. Now, sometimes there's a mincha that's just brought on its own, and sometimes there's the mincha that's brought with an animal. A proper animal that's brought has its own. They said you bring meat, so in order to bring meat, derech eretz, as you serve the master meat, you have to give him some bread and some wine also, right? So it's derech eretz that the korban of the bull, let's say, is brought with a certain amount of bread and wine. Uminchat nesachim ena tuna lo tnufa v'lo agasha v'lo levona. The mincha that's brought as a part of the nesachim, not on its own, doesn't require what a normal mincha requires, a normal meal offering requires, which is tenufa. What's tenufa? Well, it's not. It's waving, but it's not like wave like lulav. It's lift it up and back and forth, and they give it to the kohen. And hagasha is officially giving it to the kohen, bringing it forward to the mizbeach. Okay, and levona is the frankincense. A regular meal offering on its own has a scoop of frankincense brought with it that's picked up with the komets. Aval tuna melach, but still requires salt. We saw that korbanos need salt. The entire thing is burned on mizbach hachitzon. Minchat nesachim. Normally, a mincha that's brought on its own, what happens to most of it? The komets is burned with the frankincense. And what about the rest of the mincha? It's prepared into some sort of food for kohanim. 5 different ways to prepare it. We're going to see 2 ways to bake it, 2 ways to fry it, and 1 way to just make it into like a porridge-like thing or a couscous-like thing. Okay, and it's actually called solet in that case. You saw it. We'll see it, God willing, in a few program from now. The wine is libated. Is that a word? Is that a verb? Proper verb? A cromulent verb? Libated? Offered as a libation. Libated means that it's poured onto the altar. And that says, you don't put wine onto the fire. Okay? You would have think that normally everything else is put onto the fire. The mincha is put on any part of the animal is put on the fire. No, blood is put on the base or on the corners, and this liquid, if you'd start pouring wine on the fire, what would happen? You have enough, it would probably put out the fire. You put enough wine on the fire, you'll put out the fire. What was that?
I was thinking about smelling bad.
No, it wouldn't smell bad. It would actually smell kind of good. Okay. One of the things you used to do is if you had a campfire, you throw in a closed can of Coke that you didn't open yet. What happens if you throw a can of Coke into the campfire? Well, eventually it'll heat up and it'll pop the can. Then its contents will be spilled over the fire. And it won't be enough to extinguish the fire. It'll start making it burning. First, it'll dry up eventually. The sticks that it wetted will, of course, be extinguished, but eventually they will dry up again. They'll have a smell of burnt marshmallows. It was full of sugar. Okay. And if you use Diet Coke, you'll get just a weird smell because to it. Okay. Don't try this at home. They don't need the libation on the fire. Instead, Ela Magbia Yado, the Kohen raises his hand. V'yotzeik al hayesod v'hu yored lashitin. The Kohen's staying at the top of the mizbeach, and he pours it over the side into the place where it goes into the shitin. And we saw that was actually the case in the first temple. In the second temple, they widened the altar such that there was a bowl-like aperture on top of the mizbeach that received the wine, and directly underneath was the entrance to the shitin. Remember? Okay. Ein ta'un nesachim ela olat beima v'ashlamim bilvad. Wait a minute. Before they had shitin, this is talking about in the temple. How did they do a nesech, a libation in, let's say, Shilo, or any place where they put the Mishkan on a temporary basis? Remember, the original altar that for Moses' time, the copper altar, which is kind of small, that was in use the entire time the Mishkan was standing. And it says, even if they had a new altar in Shiloh, that was the one they were using in Givon during David HaMelech's reign. That was one that says that Shlomo HaMelech went to actually visit that same altar, the copper altar, the bronze altar made by Moses was still standing and still in use in Givon. So when the Kohen brought the Nesachim there, where did he pour the wine? The Nesachim is mostly describing the way it was in the temple of Jerusalem. But that wasn't the situation for a few hundred years. So, okay, if anybody has anything to sound that would help.
In the desert, they didn't even have wine.
In the desert to begin with, and how often? But same altar in Givon for the entire time David HaMelech was king. So how do they do the libations there? I don't know. Ein ta'u nesachim ela olat beima v'ashlamim bilvad. Nesachim only come with what? Burnt offering of behema and a shlamim. Okay. So what about a chatos? Chatos doesn't apparently bring it. You bring a shlamim, you have to bring the meal offering along with the wine. Bain hayu korban tzibur or korban yachid. It doesn't matter if it's a korban tzibur, a public offering, or an individual's offering. If it's an olas behema or a shlamim, gotta bring the wine. Af keves yoledet ve'lo shel kohen gadol hoyel ve'eno lo tunin nesachim. Even the keves of a yoledet, the woman who gives birth, she brings a lamb, right, as an offering. And it's not a chatos. She brings one chatos and one olah, right? A woman who gave birth, burnt offerings, they have to have nesachim with them. They have to have a meal of a libation with them, along with the flour. If it's a bird offering, or a guilt offering, or a sin offering, so there's no libation brought with them. Says a guy who's a mitzorah, he brings a chatas or an asham. Niskehem. He has to bring its libation with them, right? Have you ever known a person who's official? Probably not, right? No, because nowadays they don't paskin these things. But technically speaking, it does go to finds a splotch on his skin, and you have a chacham who knows the rules of tzaras, and he gets a kohen to declare this person a mitzorah, so he'll be a mitzorah until he brings his offering and purifies himself. Right? That could happen. No one ever said that the halachas of tzaras don't apply today. Yeah, kind of scary. How do we know that you're not supposed to bring libations with a sin offering and a guilt offering? Shnemar lefali neder onedava. This is a good one. It says lefale. What's lefale? This is kind of interesting. It's in Bamidbar, and sometimes it's instead of the piel, it's lahafli. Ki afli lindor neder yazir. The Rambam uses this verb. I don't even know how you would translate this thing. Lefale and lahafli. Mafli la'asoth. What's the verb? He does wonders. Over here we have a sefer hafla of the Rambam. What is hafla? Hafla is utterances. Yeah, expressions, utterances. It's basically shavuos, nadarim, nazirus, the usual over here. Oh yeah, arachim and haramim, declarations a person makes. So lefale neder and means to utter with the mouth. What's osefela? God does wonderful things, but I don't know what the wonder is in this case. I don't know the connection between the pa'al and the peel and the hifil. Okay. Either way, so that's what it means. He means he utters a neder and a dava. What's a neder? Promise to bring a korban, and a dava is a volunteer. Okay. We saw the difference between neder and a dava. What's the difference between neder and a dava? What? Yeah, it's one as a achrayus, one doesn't. Why? Because one says this animal will be the korban, so that's a nadava, and a neder means I have to bring a korban. So if the animal I was intending dies, I still have to bring a different korban. But if I said this animal will be a korban, no achrayus, that is, if the animal dies before, for whatever reason, extenuating circumstances, I'm off the hook. Okay, davar haba b'neder unadava. When it says regarding these libations, it says something that you could bring voluntarily. A person can choose to bring it. Yatzu chatat v'asham uvkor maser pesach. We know what a person can't decide to bring on his own. He can't voluntarily bring a sin offering, a guilt offering, a firstborn. He can't say, no, I'll treat this animal like a firstborn. Sorry, it's not a firstborn. A miser, it's not the 10th animal, so it can't be miser. Or Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach is only half a day a year, and it's very specific. And say Korban Pesach, I'll bring it in Iyar, unless it's Pesach Sheni. But even that, it's that's usually not the case, right? When is Pesach Sheni? A week from tonight. Well, the Pesach Sheni will be brought Friday. So the Pesach Sheni is not going to happen this year. Okay. Because a person can't voluntarily bring these or promise to bring these. There's a promise. Nadava is voluntarily. Ain't untune in the Sakim. So they don't bring in the Sakim. So I have a question for you guys here. My lavi shlami chagiga volas real in the Sakim. Wait a minute. This is a Gemara in Menachos, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. I think it's Menachos Mem Vav, or Tzadi Vav. I keep getting confused. Okay. It's a Gemara there. Or maybe it's Vachim now. So there's Vachim or Menachos Mem Vav or Tzadi Vav. Okay. So we'll open it up in a second. So it says here that Ein Tu'unin Nisachim. Okay. So these types of animals don't have libations. So that says, wait a minute, you're telling me anything that I can't voluntarily bring shouldn't have a libation, right? So I can't just bring a chatos or an asham, a bechor, a meiser, or a pesach. What about shami chagiga and olas re'il in the sachim? Okay, those aren't voluntary either. Shami chagiga are the animals that I bring on yontif or chol moed. Why? Because I'm showing up in the temple. First of all, I can't show empty-handed, so I have to bring an olas re'il. And by the way, multiple people can join in on one ola and also one shlamim. Okay, not every man has to bring 2 bowls, whatever it is. You get groups, but ish kemat nas yado. It's good to bring as much as you can. So you have to bring an ola for showing up, and you have to bring shlamim to celebrate yontif, save what to eat, right? So those are obligatory also, but those come with nesachim. Why were those included? So the Gemara says, Shnemar obim moadechem. You're supposed to bring the sachim on your moadim. The korbanos that come with a moed should also be brought with the sachim. Wait a minute. Let me just make sure I have this in the Gemara there. I said it was in I said Mem Vav or Tzadi Vav? That's my confusion. Look over here. This is going to be kind of interesting. Big surprise. Nope, that's the other thing. This is the figure we're going to look at. It's in two broken from now. So it's not memvav. Let's see. No. I don't have it. The Frankel Rambam. I'll just cheat. The Frankel Rambam Sefer Avodah. Let's show you something. Look at the I've got a Pesach. Okay, saying here. Okay, here it is. You got it? Here, let me read it to you, okay? This is kind of strange. I'm surprised. So I'll read it to you. I'll read it to you inside. What kind of korbanos need in the nesachim? Or what's excluded from being nesachim? It says here, you don't have nesachim with a katas and an asham. You are guilty of something. You have a sin offering to bring. Correct? Why? Because either the Torah prescribes it for korban tzibur, okay, and olah, etc. The type of thing that you could volunteer. Can you volunteer? You could say, I intend to bring this burnt offering, either this animal or some burnt offering to God. You know, an animal, some male animal, could be a bull, a sheep, a goat, whatever it is, will be a burnt offering to God. So you have to bring also the wine but you can't volunteer davar babined nava, but you can't do an actual chatas or an asham. You can't voluntarily sin. You can bring shlamim and an ola, but you can't bring chatas and asham. Or those have specific times when you have to bring them. So these 5 types of korbans don't come with an obligation to bring wine and bread. Not voluntarily bringing these things. You have to bring a korban pesach. You have to bring a bechor meister. There's no way around them. Wait a minute. I also have to bring. You told me that I have to bring meal offerings with what? And wine offerings with what? Ola and shlamim. There's a few times a year where I have to bring an ola and shlamim, and that's not something that I voluntarily do. I'm obligated to bring an ola and shlamim on the regular. Passover happened. I should have brought, aside from Korban Pesach, Erev Pesach, I was supposed to be in Jerusalem the next few days. Meal offerings and libation offerings offered with it. Okay? Mm-hmm. We would have said no. And Olas Re'iyah, Shami Chagiga, then you don't have to bring those. You don't have to bring a nesachim with those. Why? That's not, you can't voluntarily bring those. They're not volunteerable. But because the pasuk says the ones that are brought in your holiday told me I have to bring nisachim and minchas nisachim with my korban shlamim on the holiday, and my olas re'iyah, it's a moed. I have to bring nisachim. Pesach's a moed. I have a few psukim in the Torah which says v'yasu b'nei Yisrael the pasach b'moado, right? And it says in Parshas Emor, I'm going to read next week. What does it say about Pesach? Eile moadei Hashem asher tikru otam b'moadam, right? And the first part says moadei Hashem asher tikru otam b'mikra kodesh eile hem moadai. Here's the Parshas of Moados. First, there's Shabbos. Vilna says, no, it's not referring to Shabbos. It's just an introduction. 6 days you could do some work. There's 6 yontifs where you could do work. On the 7th yontif, Yom Kippur, you can't do any work. Ah, clever. But then it says in the next parsha, Eile Moad Pesach. And on the 15th, you have a holiday. So here, among other places, Pesach's the most here. Now they got it. What I say was, it's Tzadi. It's not Tzadi. I think it's Menachos. Menachos Tzadi. Here, hold this. Okay, we're going to discuss Mem Vav next time. Okay, it says here. I grabbed the Steinsaltz. That was the closest one. It says here in the Mishneh. Okay, Mishneh says, "Kol Korbonot Tzibur v'Yachid tunin nesachim." All korbanos of Yachid and Tzibur have libations, right? Chutz mina b'chor v'maiser and a Pesach. Okay, not b'chor, maiser, and Pesach, and not chatas and asham. The Rambam switched the order. He says chatas and asham, b'chor, maiser, Pesach. But the Mishnah said maiser, b'chor, maiser, Pesach, chatas and asham. He puts the sin offerings and the guilt offerings afterwards. Okay. But a mitzvah does bring nisachim, right? Rambam paskins this, and then the Gemara goes through this. Tana Rabbanav Asisa Mishel Hashem Yachol Kol Ola Leishim Yehi Ton Nisachim. Maybe anything that goes on the fire should have a libation. Hold on 1 second. Someone's trying to enter. Answer. So he says here, Talmud Lomar Ola Shlamim. Okay, Ola. It says an Ola requires Nisachim. Shlamim Minayim. So how do you know to bring with the peace offering? You have to give Nisachim also. Talmud Lamar Zevach Todah. Okay. Sorry, Zevach. You have to anything at Zevach also. Shlamim is usually the one that's Zevach. Todah Minayin. If you bring a Thanksgiving offering, how do you know you have to bring Nisachim with it? Talmud Lamar O Zevach. Okay. Or Zevach. Also, or it includes the Thanksgiving offering. Yeah. Pesach. Bring the Nisachim with Bechor Meiser and Pesach. You told me those don't have a Nisachim. Why not Bechor Meiser and Pesach and Chatas and Asham also? Why are they excluded? Why do Bechor Meiser, Pesach, Chatas, and Asham not have a libation? Talmud Lamar Lefali Neder Oben Dava, to utter a Neder and a Dava. Bob and Neder and Dava Ton Nisachim. Anything you could volunteer requires libations. Chatas, Asham, Bechor Meiser, Pesach cannot be volunteered. They're obligatory when they're obligatory. That's it. That which you can't voluntarily bring, chatas, asham, b'chor, meiser, pesach, they don't require nisachim. Mashma lotziat elu. Okay, so I know what to exclude these 5 types of korbanos. Otziat chovot habot mechamad regel. Maybe I should not also exclude that which I have to bring because it's a regel. Cholamoed, shalmei chagiga, olas re'iyah. I should also not bring the suffering for those. Umaynin who? What am I referring to? Olos re'io shalmei chagiga. Those are obligatory. I can't voluntarily bring a shalmei chagiga today. It's not yontif, right? I can't bring an olas re'io because I have no obligation to show up and appear in the temple in Iyar. Talmud Lamar o b'moadechem. That's what the pasuk says. Or on your moadim. Kol haba b'moadechem ton nisachim. Anything brought on your moadim requires libation. So my question to you is, wait a minute, so that should include Pesach, because Pesach is born Yeah, it's a moed. Pesach is pretty moed. It's the first moed. So why don't I bring libations and a meal offering with Korban Pesach? All you had to do to get ready for Korban Pesach is what? You got to get a goat. But you didn't have to also make sure someone brings the bottle of wine as libation. A person has to bring a korban, has to know how much wine, how much flour to bring. What?
Because it's Erev and it's not actually during the holiday itself.
It is the moed. We just said Bar Ba'asar Yom LaChodesh Bein Harbaim Pesach Hashem. It said it a few times. Okay, it's also in Parshas Bo that way. Moed means appointed time. Okay, Chol Moed. Chol Moed is specifically, like the Rambam points out in Chagiga, they discuss the Isser of Malach on Chol Moed is Deraiser D'Rabbanan. You read that first Rashi Moed cut and you're left scratching your head. Is it a Deraiser D'Rabbanan? So the Gemara in Chagiga actually brings drushas where it says, just like on day 1 and day 7 of the holiday, or day 1 and day 8 of the other holiday, it's Mikra Kol Melechas Avodah Sa'asu, so too all the days in the middle. But that's against Pshad the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, 8-day festival, day 1 don't do Malacha, day 8 don't do Malacha, mashma that on the middle days you can do Malacha. So the Rambam says very clearly, the Isser of Malacha on Chol Moed is D'Rabbanan, so that people treat it with the respect it deserves. There's no Isser Malacha on, what's the Moed on which everybody agrees there's no Isser Malacha? Rosh Chodesh, right? There's no Isser Malacha. Rosh Chodesh is a Moed. That's when you blow the shofar. No, the chatzotz rope. So it's a question. But either way, Pesach is a chol moed means it's a moed. Well, that's the whole of the moed. I get the whole conflict. Okay, so tefillin or no? Is it chol or is it moed? What is it? So it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And other Rishonim say no, chol moed. They take the Gemara at face value that just like day 1 and last day, the first day and last day no malacha, so too no malacha in the middle days. Makes you wonder then. So how do you define what malacha is? You're not supposed to do the right. So Chazal were left to define it. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nifyeh b'dvaro. My kasha is, according to this Gemara and the way the Rambam's bringing the Gemara, you should bring libation with your Korban Pesach. So where is its libation? So the answer that I gave in the Haggadah is that you have to look at this. When Kohanim eat a they also have menachos to eat in the Beis Hamikdash, right?
So are you gonna say that it's the matzah and the 4 cups of wine?
I'm going to say that. Why? Because Korban Pesach is, Korban Pesach is the only Korban with which what? You are bidden to do what? Actually eat it with bread. All the other menachos, all the other korbanos that a Kohen eats, let's say a Korban eats chatos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one Kohen decides, I only want to eat menachos today. I'm going to help eat the menachos. Another Kohen could eat the meat. No Kohen has to say, you know what? I will eat specific chatos today with some sacrificial bread. There's no requirement to unite them. As a matter of fact, the Kohen who wants to eat his meat can eat it with chulin also. He can flavor it. He can make it into a sandwich. He can bring in lechem chulin and make a chatos sandwich with that. Do you understand? It is only with Korban Pesach that what's the main theme of Pesach? Where you eat the Korban Pesach is like the temple, and those eating the Korban Pesach are like Kohanim. Korban Pesach turns everybody who participates into a Kohen. That's why there's so many unique halachas and mitzvahs regarding Korban Pesach that do not exist with all the other Kodshei Kalim. And like I said, Rav Hirsch points this one out. It's hinted at in a few midrashim. It's the running theme of the Haggadah, and it explains all the unique mitzvahs. Korban Pesach is the only one about which we are told to dafka eat it with bread upon matzah. Must be the matzah is the nesachim, is the mincha, so to speak, the sacrificial eating. So we'd say, wait, Kohanim eating or a person eating sacrificial food, that bonus. Kohanim ochlim, balim is kaprim. Okay, sometimes you burn the meat, sometimes you eat it. They're both forms of consumption, right? You either let the angels, the fire, eat the meat, or you let the people eat the meat. So too with the bread. So Korban Pesach, Chazal attached onto it also the mitzvah of what? It's the only sacrificial food, the only sacrificial meat with which what? You dafka have to eat with wine. You have to sit there and drink wine along with it. You bring a shlamim on Yontif. You bring a korban toda any other day of the year. You have no requirement to sit there and drink wine with it. But here you do. So in the Sachim and the Menachos of Korban Pesach must be the what else you're eating at the Korban Pesach. Okay, it's thrown in there. And that's why you eat. By the way, what we do on Pesach with our bread is modeled after what they do in the temple all the time. In the temple, all the Menachos are what? Matzah, halachically matzah. So too, on that's part of the way we become like Kohanim. We dafka eat only matzah on Passover at a meal. Remember, what's unique about this? It's not that on Passover we eat matzah. That's not unique to Passover. We eat matzah all the time. It's that we don't eat chametz, just like the Kohanim don't. So that's the answer I offered in the Haggadah to this question, which seems to say, like, if Moadechem tells you that you have to bring libations, pilgrimage sacrifice, the burnt offering for making pilgrimage on a holiday, and the shlamim that you eat on the holiday. So too, Pesach should come with a shlamim also. It should come with a libation also. Kamash Milan, you don't. Wow, getting too excited about this. You should see one more halacha. You have to run. It's okay. So wait, it's 9:30. We'll stop here. And yeah. So any questions, comments? Who's here? Yeah. See you next time, I guess. And have a good Shabbos. God willing, we should put all these halachas into practice. Someone sent a question. There are developing amounts of sacrifice through Scripture, which applies to the future temples and tithes to reduce sacrifice, unless you believe that all sacrificial commandments are cumulative, which seems to have no relevance other than an overly subservient attitude to Scripture. Is it not fair that there are only two essential offerings to convey the values of Judaism to the world? Whoa. I don't know. Rav Kook has what to say about that. Did you read in the Vochei Ador? Rav Kook says it will be reduced. Yeah, Pesach and Yom Kippur. Basically, those are the ones. Pesach's the one Rav Kook couldn't find a way out of. In Yom Kippur, we have to atone for things. We'll see. I'm not there. Do you hold like Maimonides, or like Nachmanides, lambs and goats? Yeah, maybe we'll stop offering bulls. Pigeons also. That I could see that would be the first thing to go. I don't know. That's basically you know what? Well, we'll try to answer this next week. We'll look into this. Sorry. Okay. Be good. Yeah, I know it's funny. Sometimes you just pop these types of questions, you can't get an answer. He wrote ha. Have a good night. Have a good Shabbos.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.